We're just
Oh, there we go.
Hey, okay.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, how's it
Hey.
going? Hello. Welcome back to the second of my 4 Indie August roundtables for August. Very, very excited indeed to have a great lineup again this week. Last week's was amazing. It was literally amazing. I loved every minute of it. So hopefully this week will be exactly the same. And I have
Or better.
Yes, or better. So everybody who's joining us now, if you've any questions at all that you want to ask, anything at all you want to say in the comments, just pop them in the comments for me. I'm going to drop links to each of the authors' books and all of the good stuff that you need to know about them. But first of all, I would like to go around you guys, and if you could just give me a very quick introduction to your books, who you are, and just a bit about yourselves, and just we'll get started then. So Timothy, if you want to kick us off, if that's okay.
All right. So my name is Timothy Wolf. I'm the author of the trilogy, The Legacy of Ballin. I have, these are not going to show on the green screen, but I have Platinum Tinted Darkness, Tears of the Maelstrom, and my release from last Friday. Yes, there we go. Age of Arrogance, which is the conclusion to Legacy of Ballin. And I'm also have a novella called The Whisper That Replaced God. This is entered into Sphinx or Baby Bow, depending on what you call it. And, oh, hey, Danny.
There's Dana. Hi, Dana. Sorry. Hey, Dana.
Hey there.
And that's pretty much it for me. You know.
All right, here we go. And Lindy then. Hiya.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Lindy Enns. I am the author of When Shadows Fall. Let's figure out. Right here. I was going to practice a blurb ahead of time, and then I just thought I'd wing it anyways. But it's just a story about an anxious teenager who has to go on a perilous journey through a shadow world at night in order to save her sister. It came out last year in June, so I'm over a little year into my journey as a published author, which is exciting, and basically just working hard at the sequels for now. So that's me.
Perfect. And John then.
I'm John Palladino. I'm a grimdark fantasy author. I wrote The Trials of Ashmount and the sequel, Buzzard's Ball. You can tell the covers look different, but if you were to buy this book, it would match this book now. This is my very old prototype, and it's the only book I have on me right now. But you can tell that they're different because of the spine. But they do match. I would say I always market my books as if you like Abercrombie characters combined with like a George R. R. Martin world with like a Brandon Sanderson magic system. That's usually how I pitch it, because someone else pitched it to me that way when they read it. And they were like, that's exactly what this is. And I was like, oh, great. Now I can use that, because I had no idea how to pitch them.
Good idea. And Danny then. Thanks for joining us, Danny. Hope you're doing good.
I'm doing great, thank you. Sorry, I came in at the last minute. I am Danny Finn. I write fantasy romance mostly, but sometimes fantasy without romance. I would say 2 books to get to know me would be Wings So Soft, which you can't see because of the, the background. That's an owl-themed fantasy romance that's in Smithbow and also BBNYA. And then my next book, which is called The World Within, which is a trans-sapphic fantasy romance coming out on September 14th. I have 11 other books, or 10 other books too.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I've been busy.
A good backlist, definitely. Great backlist. Brilliant, guys. So yes, so thanks again for joining me. Again, there's quite a few have just joined in the comments. So if anyone has any questions, anyone wants to ask anything to any of the guys that are here, any of the authors, then just pop them in the comments below for me. Oh, I hear a cat.
I hear a cat too. Somebody has a cat.
Yes, Overlord will probably be joining us, and because she doesn't like it when we talk to people that are not, in the family. So she's going to be coming up here in a moment, because it's the rule. I might have to turn off my virtual background if she does. Anyway, yes, that's Overlord.
Perfect. Overlord, that's brilliant. I just love that name.
Yeah, we let the kids name the cat, so one's named Happy and one's named Overlord.
I love the contrast of the names.
Yes.
Lindsay, what do you call your cat?
Haley. We were picking names actually from Firefly, and we were between Zoe and Kaylee. And it turns out that Kaylee is not the personality match for my cat, but
Okay.
that's her name.
I think
All right.
Overlord is the perfect cat name.
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very distinctive, very something you will really remember. You know, it's like right. Okay, so we'll just wait on a few questions coming in. I just sort of want to ask a couple of questions to you guys that I have here, just if that's okay. Mainly about what got you into obviously writing, and also it was quite a decisive question last week, but I would love to know if you have much more coming down through, you know, moving forward. Have you got much more planned? Obviously, Timothy, you've just finished off your trilogy there for this series that you're writing at the moment. Do you have any more plans to write any more? Have you anything in the pipeline? That sort of thing.
Yeah.
Just sort of comment on what got you into writing and what do you have coming up that we'll get really, really excited for, basically, guys. Timothy, if you want to start, do you?
I didn't realize it was my turn. I apologize. So when I finished my trilogy, I had like this sense of overwhelming dread because it was like, oh my god, I don't know what to do now. Like I didn't have anything really lined up, but I didn't want to stop writing, so I just I wrote this mess of a novella, The Whisper That Replaced God. And so far it's been pretty well received, I gotta say, which is nice. I mixed it up. I went first person, single POV instead of third person multi. And it's actually really fun to try different tents because you can use all the tools that you weren't able to use for third person. And so depending on how this book is received, like we'll see how it does in Baby Bow. I'm currently writing a novel that's in that world. And if the novella does good, I'm going to put some characters into this one. But if it flops, I'm just never going to mention these characters again. It's going to be a brand new story. So we'll see what happens.
Okay. Well, for me, I think getting into writing was just loving stories all along. Like I was writing chapter books and picture books when I was younger. And I hit a phase in high school where I had two desires, which was to be a novelist and to be a movie director, because I watched the bonus features of Lord of the Rings and it was all so cool. But the confidence needed and the training and it seems so intimidating to think of becoming a movie director. It's like writing a novel, you can sit down on your laptop and just do it. Like there's nothing to get through. But do I have more planned? Absolutely. My problem is speed. I just take a tremendously long time to write. So I spent so long on When Shadows Fall. I'm working on the book 2 and book 3. They feel like they're taking forever, but I've got a middle grade book written already that I'd like to publish one day, second drafts for a sequel. I've got like files upon files on my computer that are like opening chapters and brainstorming and ideas. And I want to write all of them. I won't live that long. So I'll write as much as I can.
Keep going. Keep going. John, what about you then?
Well, I guess I've always been into writing for the most part. In high school, I got really frustrated with like typical classic fantasy that was coming out. I was finishing books and laughing at them because I had predicted the whole ending, and it was bothersome to me because I want to be surprised when I read. So I had a conversation with my best friend in high school, and he was like telling me about the percentages of people that finished books at the time, who set out to start writing them. And I didn't believe that it was as low as it was. So I told him, I'm going to write a book in my junior year of high school. And I did. I wrote a whole book. I don't know how I finished that, honestly, but I did. And I was working on the sequel, and it was terrible. But I had written it. Fast forward like 20 years later or whatever, and COVID happens, and I've always wanted to write. I just never could commit the time to write a full novel. But I quit my job, and I said, now is the time to try. And so I wrote The Trials of Ashmount and revised it and got it out there, and it seemed to go pretty well. So I was like, maybe I'll just try and focus on writing for a few years and see just see how it pans out. So that's what I've been doing. I have another book coming out this year. I guess it's not a full book, but it's a short story anthology set in the same world as the 2 books in my series. And currently I am writing the last book in the series. It was originally supposed to be 4 books, but I have decided to turn it into a trilogy instead.
Interesting.
I want to move on to another book.
Yeah.
I understand that.
Yeah, that's interesting. And Danny then?
Well, I have always written. I think I wrote my first novel when I was in grad school, and did some. After that, I wrote some like detective, procedural, police type of novels, like in the vein of The Wire. But and I queried those for a little while, but it didn't go anywhere. And then I just I hadn't written for a little bit, and then I was playing D&D, and I was really annoyed at our D&D group because everybody just wanted to kill everything, and then like when you kill the main group of orcs, then you find like the non-combatants, like what do you do? And everybody's like, oh, we'll just whatever. It's not worrying about that. I'm like, no, like that's where the story is, and that was when I started. That was when I wrote my first fantasy book, which is Hollow Road. And the first 5 books that I wrote, there's the Mare Cycle trilogy, which includes Hollow Road, were about these beings called the Mare, which are like these hairy humanoids that are almost exactly like people, but they have hair all over. And it was a little bit inspired by the idea that what if you had like orcs, but they weren't evil? They were just people who had different features. And that was kind of what got me all started. And since then, I have the 3 books about the Mare, and then I also have the Time Before series, which also features the Mare. And then some other books that are about humans in between. 4 series, 3 mostly complete, and then 1 ongoing, including They of the West, which is a novella, kind of Western themed with a non-binary discovery arc. That's going to be in Sphinx. And coming up next, I'm working on a book about a high art pro wrestling theater. It's a fantasy book. It's been a lot of fun to write, sort of combining theater and, imaginary rules wrestling, and also a little bit of fantasy, and it's just like about the friendship. I wrote a lot of steamy books for a while. I think I have maybe 6 or 7 books that I would call steamy, but I've also written some that are not steamy, and right now I'm kind of in a less steamy phase, but I still have a few more steamy ones left. So I'm continuing in the New World, which is the 4th series, the Scrubland series here, and maybe writing some side romances in the other ones. And I have a complete standalone that I started, which is a cephalopod romance, which is really, really exciting, but I keep not writing it. So who knows?
Fascinating. I just find it all very fascinating. Coming off that then, how do you come up with the ideas for RE trilogies, books, standalones, all of that good stuff? Do you say you have 2 or 3 books in a series? Do you know from book 1 how it's going to end at book 3? If you have multiple standalones, where do your ideas come from? Do you just sit one day and go, right, this is the story for what I'm going to write? How do you come to understand what I mean? Like, how does it all
that's a good question.
How do you make it? How do you do it from the idea to the page to publishing it? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, so I guess for me, anytime I write a book, I know the ending.
Okay.
So once you know the ending, you just have to figure out how you're going to get there.
How to get there? Yeah. Okay.
So
yeah,
and that's actually not as insane as you think it is, because it's a lot easier with multi POV, because you write one character's perspective, and then what they do affects the next character, and then you write what they do. It's kind of like a series of things happening.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I found it very difficult to write a novella that was single POV, because I knew the ending, but you can't like change scenes. You have one character and you got to stick with that character.
Yeah.
And you can't be like, boring part. Let's go to the mage. But you got to like stick with it and make it work.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like ideas are such an interesting thing because they come from anywhere and everywhere. Like sometimes I don't really know what I'm going to write until I sit down and start writing, and things just show up on the page. And I'm as surprised as anybody else that there's somebody talking in the tree. Well, who is that? We're going to have to find out. But I often find I'll get like a piece of a story where it's like, maybe I have an idea for a character. and I don't know what story they're going in, but I know I want to write that character. For When Shadows Fall, I had the idea of emotionary years after the basic premise, but just that one thought of, what if there were machines that could be run by emotions? And then you start brainstorming and coming up with ideas, and oh, well, you could do this, and maybe it works like that. And it all just kind of weaves itself together in some magical process that turns into a book. But the second part of the question, I never know where the story's going. I'll know pieces of it. I have to write it to find out. Like, I always write the sequel ahead while I'm still working on the first book, because I need to know where everything's leading up to. But I don't know, you just find out in the process.
Okay.
My answer is a bit different. I am basically a 100% like on the fly writer. I will come up with an idea before I start writing for a book. Usually it's a character. Honestly, usually it's just a character's name. And when I just randomly think of this character's name or this very basic concept that I want to write, I will take notes in my phone just of the character's name. Because if I don't write it down, I'll forget it. I'll just be like, wow, that's a really cool name. So I'll write it down, and maybe I'll have like a quick idea for a personality, and I'll write that down maybe. And then I have all these notes in my phone for all these upcoming books I want to write with just basically character names. That's it. And it keeps my mind refreshed. It's very weird. So when I actually write, I don't have plans for anything really. In the Trials of Ashmount, it has 5 POVs. It was only ever, I started the whole book with like 4, ended up adding a 5th one later because I was like, it seems necessary. But I got halfway through the Trials of Ashmount writing this way, and I've always written this way. And I realized, you know, I should probably kind of know where this book is going. So I stopped for a minute and considered where I wanted it to end. I didn't really figure it out. I figured out one character's ending of the first book. I was like, okay, good. At least I have something to work towards. And then I started writing book 2. And I think it was like halfway through book 2, maybe, where I was like, you know, I really should figure out where the whole series is going. Because if I don't, I won't be able to like foreshadow things. Because I'm not like Lindy. I need to write like one book, be done with it, fully edit it, get it done, and then move on to the next one. So I don't do the whole like write multiple books at the same time thing. It's like really screws with my mind because I hate going back and forth. I don't like going out of order. There's some weird plotters out there. Maybe we have some here who will plot out the whole book and write, I don't know, chapter 30 and then chapter 15. And I'm like, what are you doing? How do you do this? I can't do it.
Absolutely not.
But props to people who can. It's just not, I can't figure that out.
I would say I'm a little bit like John in the sense that I don't plot anything whatsoever. But there's when it comes to like how do you get your ideas, there's a saying in parenting which is sleep begets sleep. So the more your kids sleep, the more they sleep, the easier it is for them to go to sleep, etc. And I feel like with books, like books beget books, ideas beget ideas. When I was writing the Mare Cycle, which is set in its own time. There were these little things that kept popping up that came from an ancient time, like 2,000 years before. And the more I started thinking about these artifacts that people were finding and what they knew about them and what they didn't know, I was like, well, clearly there has to be a time before series. So that was like filtering through my brain, as I wrote, and I started building up the lore in such a way that hopefully I'd be able to go back and write the books that came 2,000 years before, which is like Wings So Soft and the other books in that series. And I feel like every time I write a book, there's a side character that is, begging for their own story. And that's what happened with my most recent one. So I wrote a book called Unpainted, and there was a side character who owned a sex shop, and she was just really vibrant and fun. And I was like, she's got to have her own story. And that's the next book that's coming out. It's called The World Within. And then these are also spin-offs of a duology called The Weirdwater Confluence. And again, I wrote The Weirdwater Confluence, created some lore, I was like, I need more of this lore. I need more stories in this world. So the more you write, the faster the ideas come, at least to me, to the point that you have an infinite number of ideas. It's just a matter of time.
Okay, interesting. And just one more question from me, and then we'll go to the comments because I'm really nosy tonight. I want to ask a bit about covers. Okay, so I was speaking to an author recently who said that the cover of any indie release has to be on point, has to be, I don't know, it just has to be like a cover by almost. Someone sees the cover and they're instantly interested in reading the book, etc., etc. How did you guys get to where you were with choosing the covers for your releases? I mean, how did, talk me through the process of how, you know, where did you get the ideas for the covers? Was it from specific characters? Obviously some of them have characters on, that sort of thing, you know. Did you know what you wanted your cover to look like, or was it very much you work with someone else, a cover artist, or that sort of thing?
Can I jump in and disagree a tiny bit with the statement?
Okay.
So like the question is, you know, does your cover have to be 100% on point for genre? And obviously it depends on what your goals are. Like if your goal is to sell as many copies as possible and for your book to be like very popular and widely read, which you would think that would be an automatic, but not necessarily, because a lot of books are more niche. So if that's your goal, you know, you're going to need to spend money because the covers are out there and your book needs to look like that. But if your goal is to create something a little bit more niche, more weird, I don't know, like not every book has to be pushed as if it's going to be some like world-changing event. Sometimes it's just this weird little guy who ends up with a weird little story, and then there's a weird little cover, and people are like, oh, that's, you know, that's cool. And sometimes those things pick up steam on their own, despite the cover not being, you know, classic on point to the genre. So I just wanted to throw that out, because if you're writing straight down the middle of a genre, yes, your cover has to match that. But if you're in some weird side niche, I think you have more freedom. And it also just depends on what your goals are. Like my goal is not necessarily to be a professional full-time author, though obviously I would love that. My goal is to tell all the weird little stories that are in my heart. And so the covers, depending on the type of book, like I spent money on the cover of Wings So Soft and Clody's Song and some other books, because they were really like in the center of the genre lane, and I wanted to make sure that they were immediately recognizable. But some other books, I made the covers myself, like The World Within, the one you can see behind me. And it took a long time to develop cover skills, but I find it to be like a personal touch that's a little bit quirky or weird. Sometimes works, and sometimes it just works depending on, like in my case, I just want to tell this weird little story and I hope people will read it. But if they don't, like, that's okay. It's not my goal to have this book be a bestseller.
No, I get that. I understand that. Yeah, that's fair.
So I found my cover artist. His name is Alejandro Colucci on Readsy. And if you don't know what Readsy is, it's kind of like a professional space for indie authors where you can find editors, cover artists, formatters, and all that. And I didn't know who he was, but I recognized his work. He worked on The Witcher and some of the Robin Hobb books, like Realm of the Elderlings. And I actually didn't think he'd work with me because I was complete nobody. I had like 16 Twitter followers at the time. And I messaged him, and he sent me a price I thought was extremely reasonable. And I will state for the record, I'm very much in the red when it comes to my expenses. But I honestly don't care, because the way I look at it is once you buy the cover, you have it forever. I mean, like I spent a lot, but I don't have to, like 6 years from now, I don't have to worry about what I paid for the cover. And I'll show this one real quick if it works. I just think this is awesome.
It's amazing.
Variegates. And I sent him like the most useless description. I pretty much said it's a sun mask, and it's like sinister, but it's whimsical. And somehow he took that and made it into like a really beautiful picture. So I really appreciated that. And you had a good question about like characters and what you expected. When I got my first cover, this will show on the green screen, Platinum Tinted Darkness. The main character here is Serena, who is platinum hair and all that stuff.
Yeah.
When I first received the cover, I had a moment of a panic, like extreme panic, because the picture on the cover was not the picture that I described in my head, like how I always thought of her. But when you tell someone describe a 5'6", blue-eyed, platinum-haired woman, that's not very. That's only a blueprint for what you're going to expect.
Mhm.
So when I saw it, I was like, that's not what I pictured, but it fits. So I mean, that's it. That's the picture now, and that's how we're gonna do it forever.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's very surreal when you see it for the first time, because it's like it kind of feels real. I mean, obviously it's not real, but you actually there's like it's there. There's like a physical version of it.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's an interesting process. I think I was really excited about doing the cover art. I thought that was going to be one of the funnest things was figuring out what you wanted and getting someone to do it. And it actually ended up being one of the most stressful parts for me. I
Yeah.
think part of it is I went with Miblard and I gave them my brief. I gave them some references and stuff, got the first sketch back. I really liked it. But I didn't realize how much of the onus was on me to know the genre and to know the expectations for the cover and really guide the artist in the right direction. So we were quite far into the sketch process. I was happy with it. And then I got kind of a negative comment from someone, and I thought, I should widen my range of feedback. And I shared it on social media, and I just heard, like, across the board, it looks like middle grade and it's a young adult novel. And I was like, oh no, what do I do? Like I thought I had the cover. It used to be that Ara was actually here, here in the middle of the forest. And that was the idea I originally had. I wasn't thinking of the silhouette, but I was thinking dark forest crowded around her, showing her fear and stuff. But in the end, after a lot of attempts to kind of get the cover to the right genre, it felt like removing the character was going to be the easiest way to get that middle grade look away, like steer it a little bit more YA. But I think I've learned a lot in the process. I'm hoping the second cover design goes a bit smoother, but it is an amazing feeling when this comes in the mail the first time
Mhm.
and it's got this beautiful, oh, look at the font and my name on it. You can hold it in your hands. That is just an incredible feeling.
Makes it all worthwhile, sort of.
Oh yeah. Now that I'm on the other side, I think very fondly of the cover. I forget that I was like pulling my hair out and in tears in the middle of it.
John, what do you think?
Well, I was on my phone for a second because I wanted to find some images. I don't know if it's going to be able to show, but I have a bit of a story. When I first finished my book, I always loved when I was a kid. I went into the bookstores and I would look in the fantasy section, and there'd be all these really cool like landscapes and fantasy setting like art. And I feel like in modern times we don't get as much of that anymore, which is totally fine. Trends change and all of that. And but I just wanted that for me, I guess. And I went on. I can't remember. I think it was Fiverr because I was inexperienced and didn't know what I was doing. And I found a profile that matched with what I was thinking. I was like, this is awesome. This is what I want. And it's cheap. I couldn't have been more wrong. I got completely scammed. So this is the artwork that I received. I'm going to see if it can translate.
Yep.
I remember seeing that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I posted that online at one point. I don't know if it's.
You can see it. Yeah.
Anyway, it was not good. So I was looking around trying to find artwork from anyone. I think I joined a Facebook group that was for specifically fantasy artists that were working with authors, I think. And I was just scrolling through the group and I stumbled across an artist. His name is Dusan Markovic. I can't pronounce his name, but it's something like that. And I found this picture, which when I saw that, I was like, he's the guy for me. I think he's really good.
Yeah.
And so I saw how much it cost to do it. I think my first cover cost, like this one here, I think I'm spitballing here. I think it was $1,800, which is ridiculous, right? But it's for original art. Anytime you get original, like hand-drawn art, it's a lot. I knew going in it would be a lot. The next one, Buzzard's Bowl, is a bit more involved. And so this one cost, I think it was 1900, honestly. And they are full wraps. They go around to the back. I could show you I'll show you. This is a prototype. The artist, my designer had really darkened the back on accident, so you actually can't see anything on the back of this. There's a ship actually. You can't see anything there. Again, this is just a prototype. It's fixed on the real version.
Yeah.
But so I knew going in, like, I want to spend a lot of money on my cover only because I know what I want. I don't think it's a requirement. It's just what I personally wanted to do on I just really liked that art style, and I was like, I don't care, I'm just gonna go for it. And he's such a nice guy, and he will edit it whenever I need. He'll give me any files whenever I need. He can be a bit slow with some things sometimes, but I accept it because I just think he does such a good job. It's just, not everyone wants to sink that much money into it, which is fine. I mean, I don't know that I'll ever make the amount of money I've paid on each book back, but I wanted to shoot my shot, and I think that editing was also very expensive for me, especially in the first book. Full transparency, the Trials of Ashmount's like full cost was something like $11,000. It was stupendously high. I didn't know what I was doing. I spent a ton of money on things that I maybe shouldn't have. The sequel, Buzzard's Bowl, actually was, I think, around $5,000. So, like, I cut that down a lot. But just the cover for Buzzard's Bowl was almost $2,000. So then you have editing a couple times on top of it, and that's where I was at. But along with other costs, because I don't know how to do anything myself. So even formatting I pay for because I'm
I do that too. So.
Formatting was so hard.
I know that you can learn how to do it and do it like competently enough, but I don't know. I don't have faith in myself with like that kind of thing. I was like, I'll just have someone else do it because I want it to look good and right, and I don't have faith in myself. And I guess in order to do it to yourself, you already have to spend like several $100s to get the right like software, I think, right? So I don't know. For me, it was like, do I take the risk, buy the software, and suck, or do I just pay like I forgot how much it is, 120 or something to have someone do it? I mean, it's not that expensive, but it all adds up, and it's a nightmare. I just don't have confidence in myself when it comes to anything remotely artsy or technical when it comes to making things look good. I am terrible. Look, I'm wearing a plain black shirt, guys.
Willow's comment, look at Tim being all fancy with a blazer.
I bought this an hour ago, so I still have the tags. I mean.
I just had to pick that one on. Okay, so we've got quite a few people in the comments here, so I'm just going to choose a few questions here, and we'll just do a round table then, and just if you guys are happy enough to just answer as much as you can, that'd be great. So Becky, who's one of my lovely good friends, actually I want to just mention, Rebecca, literally all of the books, all of the authors that are coming onto these round tables, I make sure that I read you guys' books before you come on, and the lovely Rebecca has been buddy reading most of them with me.
Fun.
So I've literally talked her into reading so many indie books this last wee while, it's ridiculous. But yes, she's here now, and she wants to know, how do you keep up the momentum when life gets in the way? And just off that as well, can I ask, what is your support system like? Like, do you have a good support system? What, I would like to add that into that question, if that's okay.
My answer on this has changed because I started writing about 3 years ago, and my original answer was, you must keep writing no matter what, otherwise you're not going to succeed. So if you're busy, you're depressed, you just got to sit down and write. And now that I've done that, my answer is no longer that answer. I think it's really because writing a book is a marathon. Like it really is. It takes, depending. I'm assume we're all normal here, and it takes like a year at least to write a book.
At least.
You can't. It's not sustainable to kill yourself writing books, no matter what you feel. You really got to take. I crushed my mental health in the last 3 years because I just would not take a break, even when I needed one. It was like, no, if I take 1 week off, it's going to be 1 month and 1 year, and then I've lost everything. So I just kind of forced myself to do it. Now that I'm in a better place, I am more than happy to take a break. Like I haven't worked on my current work in progress in over a week, and I don't feel guilty. I don't care. It gets done when it gets done, and I'm not gonna hurt myself for this anymore. You know.
Yeah, that's fair. I hear you.
Yeah, I think there's definitely times where life just comes off the rails and you have to accept that, you know what, this week is not going to be a writing week. I'm sick, things are happening, life's gotten too busy. Generally speaking, I do try to carve out daily times to work. So like I set my alarm early, I get up in the morning, I try to fit in. Sometimes, honestly, it's only 20 minutes. I try for more like an hour or a bit, where even when I don't feel like it, I typically do it. But if I'm sick and I need a little extra sleep instead of writing, I will just take that break that I need. But as far as support systems, I am the luckiest person on the face of the planet because literally every person in my life supports what I'm doing and is my cheerleader. Like my mom and dad and sisters are like my biggest fans. I think my dad sold more copies of my book than I have because he peddles them like everywhere that he goes. Brags about the right. Oh, absolutely. Like my coworkers have beta read my books and bought them when they came out, and like just everyone that could support me does. So I have never felt like people are frowning upon what I'm doing. There's always people backing me up.
I don't tell anyone at my job that I'm a writer.
They all know I'm a writer.
Yeah, because I'm a supervisor. If so, I don't want them to be like the lizard guys telling me to raise productivity.
That's fair. John, what about you?
I kind of agree with Tim on this one, where it's you have like I started out, I have to write every day, and I immediately realized I can't. Some days I just don't feel like it, honestly, and that's just it's a block in my brain. Right, I sit down, and I'm like, nope, not today. And, I have this weird thing where I will go like 3 or 4 months and write every day, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I'm out. I can't figure. I'm just mentally not in it anymore, and then I'll go like three months without writing at all. It's weird, but it is what it is. I can still write a book in a year, so I guess it works. In terms of support systems, when I was writing my first book, I had joined like writing groups on Facebook because I was trying to figure out how to do some of the stuff that I wanted to integrate myself into the community so that when I had questions like, how do you do this once you wrote the book? Like, I could find help with it. So I spent the whole year of COVID basically in those groups making friends and then writing my book. So when I had my book done, this whole time I'd been talking to some people online, and they were my support system. Unfortunately, after I published the first book, I kind of phased out of being online as much. I moved across the country. I live with a girlfriend now I didn't have back then. So my life has changed a lot. And I'm not online nearly as much as I used to be. And I feel like my support system that I had for the first book, and I think the first 2 books, now that I'm thinking about it, I had the same like 3 people I talked to all the time, daily, actually. I don't talk to any of them at all anymore. And so it's weird because they were my support system and now I don't have one. So it's just like weird because I'll have a lot more. Well, I always had a lot of self-doubt. Let's be honest. I think everyone that writes does. But it's like I don't have that person that I used to talk to and they'd be like, you're so good and you did so well on this and tell me something about the next book, and then I would tell them a little nugget, and they'd be like, "Oh my god, I can't wait!" And now it's like, who do I talk to? So it's, I haven't talked to anyone. And so it's a little weird because the support system is gone and it's just like, oh, but I'm making it.
You absolutely are. Yep. We're your support system now.
Yeah. I was going to say, you just need to send your ideas to Barb.
Yeah. We really want you to keep writing, John. You're fantastic. Your writing's great. Your writing's great. So just keep going.
Thank you.
Definitely. No, 100%. And I really mean that.
So as far as momentum, when life gets in the way, I do write every day or pretty much every day. I mean, I take days or off now and then, as life dictates, but partly just because I need to, like the creative outlet that I get by writing is something I can't get any other time. And I have a very, very busy life. I'm a teacher. I have 2 disabled kids. And, there's a lot, there's just not that much time. So like I have this set time every day, 30, 45 minutes, where I just sit down at the computer and I chat with my online writer support group peoples. And I often will do writing sprints like in a Discord or something. So for me, having that, I know that, between 6:30 or between 6 and 7:30, I'm going to have a 30-minute writing period, and I'm probably going to get 600 words or so. And then if I do that every day, like when 6 o'clock arrives, my brain's like, okay, here's the story. Let's get ready. So as soon as I open the Word doc and, my fingers are ready to go. And it's always there because I always do it. But I just took a month off because I had sort of burned myself out, and I also have long COVID, so it makes things a little more challenging.
Yeah.
But to me, 30 minutes, 45 minutes every day, like that's 2 books a year, just in terms of total word count. Mm-hmm. And if I have more time on the weekend to edit in between books, that's kind of how I roll. And I couldn't imagine not doing it. Like I kind of felt weird after a week or so. I was like, shouldn't I be writing right now? Mm-hmm. Like the story's kind of festering.
Yeah, fair enough. And you've good, tremendous support there as well.
Yes, I mean, I have support from my family, but really it's about online communities, as John was mentioning, and it's hard when you lose a community because, most of us are in several different communities and we might spend more time in one or the other. But if you lose a community that you relied on, it takes a while to find a new one. And then, when you find the new community, you really appreciate what it means because you were missing that community when you lost the old one.
How do you guys feel about X Twitter sort of as a indie community, sort of like a group of people who, not just myself, there's so many other people out there that are shouting about your books that want. I'm always very much, it really makes me cross and upset that your books don't get more visibility, because I have found so many what I call hidden gems, like gems. I've found so many amazing books. I'm really dipping my toe in. This is the start of my journey. But literally, I'm having the time of my life. And it's like, do you feel that social media platforms like X Twitter, do you feel that you have the support there from people and it helps you write and it makes you, it gives you the feeling of, I'm going to keep going here. There's people who want me to keep writing. Do you know what I mean? Do you find that social media is a good place for the support as well, supporting your books and people shouting out, No.
I absolutely love Twitter, and I didn't expect to love Twitter because it had like a really bad reputation before I joined.
Yeah.
But I've met so many people that are become my closest friends. Like Bill's in the chat under Will Rath, and he's like one of my best friends right now. Like I always we message each other and just kind of vent and complain. And if it weren't for the community, I would have quit a while ago. I really would have, because I mean it does suck a lot of times, because like sometimes. When you get a few days of 0 in a row, you start to wonder, is that it? Is that the end of the road? So it's like I was on the ledge like last week because my release was Friday, and by Saturday I only had 38 reads. I was like, oh my god, this is like the biggest flop I've ever had. And then the very next day it shot back up to over 1,000. So I was like, okay, I just gotta relax. But having someone you can just kind of vent to is so important.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
I really hope Twitter does well, because like I'm 37 and I have weak knees, so I really can't do TikTok. So I Twitter's really got to keep going, you know.
Yeah,
Love-
honestly, I've just loved Twitter and I did not expect to. I remember like when I first heard about it as a social media being like, that sounds stupid. I'm never doing that. And then I heard that the writing community on Twitter was really good. And I was kind of getting into the self-publishing game. And I thought, yeah, I should do it. And honestly, I don't know that I've connected with many readers that way, unless the readers are also indie authors. But connecting with other authors, being able to talk about their books and my books and engage with each other's posts and stuff, I just find that a really good motivation. And just, I don't know, it helps you to have a better understanding of what the indie world is when you're able to interact with other authors who are going through the same journey. They've learned lessons you haven't learned yet. I know I have one friend, or Jam Jar Lurker, I think is what he does for his Twitter handle. But Francis, he will send me messages being like, here's a competition for indie authors. You should enter When Shadows Fall. Here's this event that's happening. You should enter When Shadows Fall. And I wouldn't have that if I didn't make the connection through Twitter. So,
Yeah.
So I was never on Twitter until after, well, I guess I joined when I was writing my first book because someone suggested I do it. I was there for 2 seconds. I said, I knew I hate this platform. I still do. And so I left and I stayed on Facebook. And then during SPFBO, I entered my book into that competition. And I was assigned to a group, and it had, I can't remember how many judges there were. Actually, Danny was one of them. And I believe that you were in that year anyway. And I followed everyone on Twitter because nobody had active Facebook accounts really. So I went to the group, I looked at all the social medias, and I was like, I want to follow all the judges just because obviously I'm in the competition. I'd like to see what's going on. And I started interacting with them. And actually, Danny, that you were always very nice on Twitter. We've interacted plenty of times there. Always not, back then, I didn't have any followers really. And you would share my posts and interact. And I think that really helped get me out there to people that became early friends and stuff. And through Twitter, or X now, I made a lot of connections, especially with reviewers. And I would just talk to different reviewers, and I had reviewers reach out to me on Twitter and say, hey, I want to review your book. And I would reach out to other reviewers. And so, yeah, I actually mentioned the writing group I was in on Facebook and made a really long post about why everyone on there who wanted to be an author should go onto Twitter, because on Facebook, at least in my experiences, I can't connect with anyone that actually wants to read or buy the book. It's just, I've only found other writers. And on Twitter, I was able to find a lot of reviewers and readers and other authors too. But I made this long post that had all the handles of really active, nice reviewers or just big accounts that would interact with you. And actually, I put Danny on that list. I guess that was your old account because you lost that.
I did. Yeah, I mean, I agree with a lot of what you all said. I mean, I'm a bit of a Twitter obsessive, unfortunately, and I have a very huge love-hate relationship. That was where I connected with the first group of readers that I had, who were a lot of indie book reviewers, like Barb, although you weren't here. I don't think you were here back then. And also other writers who taught me the ropes, etc. But over time, what I noticed is that, you end up meeting all sorts of people. If you limit yourself to only talking about writers, and I'll talk to writers, then you're not going to meet readers. But finding a way to get in reader spaces as a reader more than as an author and talk about books. I had a lot of interesting conversations with book bloggers who, frankly, they would never read my book because it's not the kind of genre they read. But that doesn't really matter because we just talk about books and it's great. The other thing about Twitter is that obviously I've been on writing Twitter for a while. But recently, in the past couple of years, I've kind of drifted over to trans Twitter as well. And it's ironic that the platform that's owned by, such a horrible, horrible person who's, disowned and dead names his daughter, is also the place where I've connected with trans communities, some of which are trans writers and some of which are just people. And it's been amazing and just bizarre to think that on the worst platform in the world for transphobia, that's where I've met all my trans friends. I mean, except for the few that I know in real life. So Twitter is so great and it's so terrible. It's amazing.
Fair play. That's fair. I've definitely been welcomed with open arms, I have to say, over the last while by pretty much everybody that I interact with and speak to. So it has been really nice, to get to know so many of you guys and just you actually talk back to me. I think I spoke last week about I do a lot of work. I've always done a lot of work with traditionally publishing companies where I work for 3 or 4 on my Bars Bookland channel. This is a sort of side channel that I have now just for indie. And I've never been able to talk to an author of any of those books that I've reviewed for any of those publishing companies. I've never been given an opportunity to speak to any of those authors. I've never spoken to them on X, Twitter, any social media platform. So the fact that you guys are so welcoming and so happy to just even DM me back when I ask you a silly question, it really, really does go a long way for us guys as well. Makes a difference to us as well because, it's just nice to actually be able to connect with you guys and speak to you,
Mm-hmm.
So thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, you're doing us a favor.
Yes, we love to see the enthusiasm.
Oh, thank you so much. I'll try my best. Couple more questions then. The time always just goes so quickly when we're chatting. If you had a do-over for any of your books, is there anything you wish you could change, e.g. a character you killed off too soon, or a decision in book 1 that caused problems in book 2 or 3? That's a really good question.
Yeah.
Timothy, what do you
I
think?
just want to, for the record, I love my first book. I'm very proud of my first book.
Mm-hmm.
It is far and beyond the worst book I'll ever write in my life, just because I was newer. I feel like if I could rewrite that book today, it would be much better. But I don't want to give the wrong idea. I love the book. I'm so happy it exists.
No,
There's so many when I reread my first, there's so many little things that bother me. Like I was in this weird phase where I used semicolons all the time. Just because I wanted I didn't want the pause of having a period. I wanted it to be read as a sentence. And one thing that got brought to my attention, this evaded all my editors, all my beta readers. I used the word snicker like 70 times in my first book or something like that. So it's become like a running joke that every time someone talks about my book, they talk about the Snickers. So to kind of alleviate that, in my second book, they're talking about a book in that world, and they're just trashing it because there's too many Snickers and all these other things. So I take all the fair criticisms that I received and put them into the my books. Just kind of it's a nod to the
I absolutely think of things that I would change. I think that's one of the problems with being a discovery writer is even though I do some writing on the sequels ahead of time, there's always something that blindsides you where you're like, oh, why did I say that? Now I'm committed to that. And I have this different idea that would make more sense if I could change that. So there's been a number of times I keep my story on my phone on Kindle and I will do searches to be did I give this person a name already? Did I say how many people live in this town? Trying to figure out what mistakes I've made that I have to stick with. I also had a pretty big continuity error in my book that completely missed me, but they leave in a direction that is north at one point in the story, and then they magically show up somewhere in the south later, and it was supposed to all be on the same side. It's it's a little thing, but I get annoyed by little things, so I would go back and change it if I could. But it's published.
So for me, there is one thing it's a regret. I don't know if I'd change it because I feel good about it, but also even when I did it, I knew it was awful. And in my second book, both of my books have 5 POVs, but and in the second book, a lot of all these stories really start to come together. And in my head, I will say that this involves character deaths, but I won't give you numbers or specifics. I don't want to ruin it for anybody. But there is a point where these stories come together that I realized as I was writing it, because I'm also a discovery writer, it didn't make sense for somebody or multiple somebodies to get out of a situation without it being like an act of God. And, I was like, crap. So there's a moment in that book that really hurt me to write. I was like, this was never planned, and but it's just like the right thing to do based on the situation. And now I'm writing book 3, and I'm like, oh man, kind of regret doing that, but I also don't, because I think it was really good. It's just like, that's hurts my creative soul, because I had, when I was writing that whole thing, again, I don't want to give anything away. I just had plans for other things, and kind of axed it because I just thought it made sense, and I didn't want to put like a, I don't know, one of those eye-rolling moments. No, it's fine in a lot of books, but I specifically was already marketed as a grimdark author, and I just felt like it had to happen, because it just otherwise I don't think would have made sense. I suppose I could have went back and changed it, but when I wrote it, I was like, this is good. It's just there. I don't like it.
Well, I might regret a character or two that I killed in the archive, but I kind of am okay with that. The one thing I do regret is it took me a while to realize that I really like writing steamy stories, but when it happened rather suddenly. So I had a book called The Living Waters, which is a very tranquil story with a very light love story in it. And the next book in the Weird Water Confluence, which is not exactly a sequel, but it is sort of a sequel, like you could read it on its own, ended up being like super, super, super steamy. And that made that duology like very awkward, because the kind of person who would like The Living Waters might not necessarily like The Isle of a Thousand Worlds. And I didn't really know what I was doing, but like I had to write this book, and there are reasons for that. Like this is part of my gender journey, honestly, was writing these books. But as a result, like I went from no steam to all the steam like super fast, and I had to kind of reinvent myself as an author, and that was challenging, and I'm still in the process of it, but I can't say I regret it, because I needed to write those stories, so it's what happened.
Fair enough. Brilliant. And just one last question then from me. How many questions have I asked before we finish off? Can you guys go round and give me a recommendation, an indie recommendation?
Ooh.
Not to put anyone on the spot, think about it. Whoever wants to go first, but is there any indie book recommendations that you can give?
I can go first. I've got one
Okay.
off the top of my head. A Troop of Shadows by,
Okay.
I want to say, Jennings Zabrinsky. It was the cover that really drew me in. It's fantasy Western blend. And the thing that really impressed me with is I really like character stories and the interactions between characters, and every character feels real. The conflicts feel real. They don't feel like they're exaggerated or just made to happen. Even the characters who are unlikable, you get how they work and you still like them despite the fact that they're disagreeable. And also Murder at Spindle's Manor, last year's SBFBO winner.
Yes.
I just read that recently, and I see why
Yeah,
it won.
fantastic.
Great book.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah.
Yes,
Really,
yes,
really
it was.
I got 2. I'm going to see if the green screen allows me to do this. First one,
Wow.
God's Blood Tragedy by Bill Adams. This is not working out.
Invisible.
Not
But
working.
Hold it right in front of your chest.
There we go. God's
Oh,
Blood
yes.
Tragedy.
That's at the top of my
This
TBR on Kindle.
is
Yeah.
an excellent
Very good.
book. And another one, this one's a novella, Your Blood and Bones. Or
Oh,
better
yes,
known
I
as
know that one as well.
YBAB.
Yeah. Mhm.
This is one of the best novellas I've ever read, so I strongly recommend it.
Thank you very much, Timothy.
Oop.
I know both of them, which is even better. John,
Well,
anywhere? Or Dana, yes?
yeah, so I'm going to recommend something a little different. I hope sci-fi is okay. Is that okay? Is that allowed? There's a book called Catnip by Virya Durav, and it's weirdly enough it's a love story between a cat girl and an AI in space, and it is so delightful. It's a romance. It's so delightful, and it's so feel good and fluffy. Like if you're having a down day or a down time, just pick it up. Catnip by Virya Durav, and it's not something, because there's only so much overlap between trans writer Twitter and fantasy writer Twitter or book Twitter. I always try to recommend the one to the other whenever I can. I'll put that in the comments as well. How does one have romance with an AI? Well, you have to read it and find out, right?
Well, my DMs are AIs or bots or something trying to initiate romance.
All right, so I have two recommendations because I don't know if one is self-published, but my first one I know is, and that's Legacy of the Brightwash by Crystal Matar.
I want to read that.
It was a book
Fantastic.
I didn't think I would like, honestly.
Fantastic.
I'm not a romance guy most of the time. I like romance and fantasy. I don't like fantasy and romance. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I just I don't want it to be the main story, and it kind of is, and that's okay. It works. So I read it because it was recommended to me, and also I kept hearing about it, and I don't know. I just on a whim picked it up, and I like Crystal Matar as well. I've talked to her several times on Twitter, and enjoyed interacting with her. So I figured I'll buy it and read it, and it's really good. It's just not my normal genre, but I really liked it. It's like set in, I don't know what the exact genre is. I think it's like a Victorian era type. There's like guns and stuff, but it's pretty good. And then the other one that I really enjoyed, maybe someone here knows if it's self-published. I'm pretty sure it is, but M.L. Spencer's Dragon Mage.
Yes.
Oh, that's a great book.
Yeah.
It's one of the first big fantasy hits in self-publishing, I think.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
it was
haven't
a pretty good
physical
book.
that one, but it's really good.
I really liked the first half of that book. I would give a 10 out of 10. I thought it was so good. For me personally, the second half goes down a bit. I didn't like it as much, but it's still like, even that being said, it's still really good. The whole book is very good. I'm very interested in seeing what happens in the next one. I don't know when that's coming out. I think it was supposed to be soon, but I think it got delayed. I think she had something going on in her personal life. I don't really know, but I think it was supposed to come out sometime last year, but I don't know. Anyway, eagerly awaiting it.
Dragon Mage is so good, it got me stressed out because I was like, man, I'm not this good. So
One of those.
Everyone's TBRs are growing. Don't even talk to me. You should
Just
see
like-
what my TBRs like.
Also, as an aside, the Dragon Mage hardcover is such a cool book.
Yeah.
I don't understand how. It's just, I don't know. There's something about it that just feels so nice. And I don't know. I don't know what she did, but I love that. Like, just the physical book so much. I can't even explain why. The pages, just the feeling of the jacket, everything about the hardcover. I'm like, this is amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty cool book. Brilliant. So you've just added how many books to my ever-growing TBR. I've never been as happy to have Kindle Unlimited in my life. Honestly. I do try though. You guys maybe know that I work a second job and I get paid every Friday, and I try to give myself at least a couple of indie physical copies of books, so that I like to try to do it, to support you guys that way as well. So, but Kindle Unlimited's amazing whenever, obviously, I'm a bit skint. But anyway, so I think that if you guys are happy, I could talk to you all for another hour. It wouldn't even annoy me, but I think we'll cut it off here. I've had a fantastic time. I've had a really good chat with you guys. It's been lovely. And everyone in the comments, thank you so much for supporting the channel and being here as well. I really, really appreciate it. There's another 2 more scheduled for the next 2 weeks and then 2 more in September, but just keep an eye on the X feed and you'll get all the details on those. But for now, I'd like to say thank you so much for joining me, and
Thank you for having us.
see you.
Thank you for having us. It was great.
Not a worry.
Thank you,
so
Becky.
much.
Or by Barb.
You're okay. No, you're fine. You're fine.